When? Next one? Next home game? Test.
Brown says, get that India, big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a priest! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell Gillard!
G'day ladies and gentlemen, my name is John, also known as Forty20. Joining me as always is my good mate Craig or 60s. We're live at Pablos at Parramatta Leagues Club as part of the Cumberland Fro, hosting a live edition of the Tip Sheet, mate. How's it going?
Mate, I'm going very well, and g'day everyone, all the Parramatta supporters here. Let me hear a hello from you, Parramatta supporters.
There we go, you'll love to hear that one.
And look, we have got some Manly supporters here, I noticed, so...
A very, very warm welcome from all the Parramatta fans there. You'll love to see that.
And we've now got Joey Grima's just walked in, so a big welcome to Joey Grima. Thanks for joining us, Joey.
You're welcome, mate.
All right, let's get Joey in here. For those who don't know, Joey is an absolute legend of the club, been a long time Parramatta man, heavily involved as a coach and an administrator in the football side of things, and he is an absolute champion. Joey, great to have you on board, mate.
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. Sorry about that. It is bumper to bumper out there. It is mayhem, and I was sidestepping like I was 15-year-old trying to get in here, ready for 1 o'clock. It's great to be here.
Mate, I heard you had a mean step back in the day.
Oh, I don't think I had
I was too young to remember.
Yeah, no. I just got under him because I was so short.
You'd be an absolute legend in the current interpretation of the rules, mate. I'll tell you what.
I make the rules and I break the rules, so it'd be great.
Well, mate, we've got a big show today, so anyone that's planning on sticking around, just to let you know what we have in store. We'll be with you probably till about 1:45. Then at about 2:15, we've got Steve Ella, Eels legend, joining us for a bit of a chat. So if you're sticking around, fantastic. If not, if you're heading over for the New South Wales Cup game, on your way out, we've got a bit of a game day survey that the Leagues Club's asked if you wouldn't mind filling in. There's a QR code for you to scan if you can do that. And if you're a Manly supporter and you think we're lousy, you can say it was a great day, and you may be saying that Parramatta's will continue entertainment that's not quite up to it. So we'll have a bit of fun with you today. We're going to talk a lot of Parramatta, a lot of rugby league, and sit back and enjoy.
All right, Joey. Everyone knows that Parramatta is a juniors club, and it was a very big week for the juniors. We had something like 17 representatives in the New South Wales City under-16s and under-18s boys, as well as the under-19s ladies that played last weekend. Can you give us a bit of a rundown on how they performed?
Yeah, it was a great, not a surprise, but it was a great reward and recognition for our young men and women being identified in our junior rep programs, particularly in our Harold Matthews, SG Ball and our Tasha Gale Cup. We had 13 people represented in those 3 programs, as well as 5 staff. So it just identifies that we've got some not only really good players coming through, but some extraordinary staff. They took on the format changed somewhat this year. They went away from New South Wales and Queensland. It was a city versus country. Whilst the country selections or pickings were slim because they only retained to 2 or 3 clubs, it meant that the city side had a bit of an advantage. However, in saying that, all our players played admirably, and some of them were best players on the field. So I know we spoke 3 weeks ago on your podcast about the advantages of these players being selected into these elite programs and representative squads. It just ensures that we have got genuine and the right people at our place from their ability, and being around more elite players within their own environment just gives them the confidence. The city sides all won last week. Our Harold Matthews, SG Ball, our 16s and 18s, and our city side, Tasha Gale went down last night in a close victory against the other New South Wales side.
Yeah, so just on those Tasha Gale girls, we had the two of them that were selected in the city team. It must be very pleasing for the Eels as we work towards increasing women's participation in rugby league to have that representation.
It does, and off record, if I can say that on a podcast where there's many, many people listening, we're going to be very close in getting one of our city girls into the New South Wales side, which is a great foundation for us, particularly all the talk with the NRLW, the new initiative for a team or two teams coming in. So really pleased for Sitta and really pleased for Ruby Jean.
Speaking of Sitta Payne, she scored the opening try and ended up bagging a double as part of that first game for the Carnivals. That was really awesome to see.
Yeah, it was, and we know how well she can score tries. She scored so many this year playing in that competition.
All right, let's stay on the pathways, Joey. It must have been something that gave you great pride to see Jake Arthur make his NRL debut against the New Zealand Warriors in Magic Round. You want to walk us through that for everyone here?
Yeah, it was very emotional moment for not only the family but the people around him. And when Brad selected him into the squad, I rang up a few people close to Jake, and I was very emotional in talking with him because he's such a great person. And a lot of people have I've seen what Jake's had to deal with each week, each year, because of his surname. He doesn't get the recognition of his own ability. And when he was selected into first grade, I rang up coach and I said to him, this is one of the best decisions you made for our club. Not only did he deserve it, but he was ready. So for having someone like that, who is so humble, who works hard at his game, when he was 14, 15 and 16, he would tell you that he wasn't the most gifted, strong, fast, but he just worked at his craft. He's got an unbelievable catch-pass game, and he just has better understanding of what shapes to run and where the team needs to get to. That's his number one trait. But I'm glad he's more Michelle than Brad because he's so composed and so calm and really delighted. And I know in our household, my wife and two kids, we were so emotional when he jumped onto the field, and when he scored that last try, we were just, it felt like we were at the stadium at Brisbane last week.
And obviously you had those two great pieces of insight, obviously with the camera shaking to Brad when he scores a try, and Brad really showing that emotion. And then early this week, post-game, we got to see Jake going back to the locker room and embracing his father in a really candid insight to how close, not just father and son, but this entire team is, given that Papali'i and Reid Manu are looking on in almost as much enthusiasm as the father himself. So
yeah, and I would go as far to say that was the most emotional thing that I've seen in the past 5 to 6 years.
It was the magic part of Magic Round, wasn't it?
It was magic. Yeah. It was magic.
I'll tell you the part of Brad Arthur that I'm glad that Jake does have, and that's the toughness. Because what we've seen in New South Wales Cup, I mean, we've seen it all through his Pathways journey, but what we've seen in New South Wales Cup with Jake has been that he gets targeted. And you expect that with the halves, that they're going to get targeted, but he cops the hit, just gets up, gets on with it.
I think if you got the name Arthur, you have to be mentally tough.
Yes,
little brother Matt coming through, he's knee-high to a grasshopper, but aggressive, tough, knows what he has to do. So it's a trait that they've inherited from Brad.
We're going to look ahead a little bit here with this, but at the moment, Jake and Brad form a union that's not as common in rugby league as you might think, with a father-son, coach-player relationship. But I'm just wondering, if we go down the future, I don't know there's ever been a father, two sons in the same team. That'd be quite an achievement.
It can happen. It can happen.
So just on the debut, was it everything that you expected?
You know what you're going to get with Jake Arthur? His best game and worst game are so close because he's so consistent and mentally tough. Everyone who played with him that day knew what they were going to get. Everyone knew. He does it at training, week in and week out. Was I surprised? No. He didn't do anything outside that he would normally do in a game of rugby league. He passed well, he kicked long and showed resilience by getting his body in front. And to be fair, he scored that try in the last part of the game, but I think he scored 4 or 5 tries in knock-on effect cup.
He's been, very strong in the reserve grade.
All I knew that the boys were elated that Brad selected Jake, and he was going to do the job for the team, and they were going to do their job for him.
And just through the week, I did take the opportunity to try to get a few words from BA, his thoughts on how Jake went. I think his words went something like, he went okay. That's probably high praise.
That's high praise.
To be fair, we've all coached our kids, and I know this is an extreme level, but you tend to be harder and tougher on your kids than you do the other players in your team. So I think Brad, that coming from Brad, that's a massive
That's a
pass.
big thumbs up. That's a big thumbs up.
Okay, now we're into the part of our chat with Joey where we take our questions that come from listeners or people that visit the Cumberland Throw website. And we've got one from Andy, and it's about a very hot topic in the NRL, which is around the crackdown and the protection of players. So, at the moment, there's some talk that this crackdown's going to extend to training and to opposed sessions. So, just in that, how important are opposed sessions in the team's preparation in any given week?
Certainly at our joint at Parramatta, we do 2 opposed sessions each week, and you're there for every single one, so I should be asking you this question, 60s. It's going to be really, really important. The rules are you can't make contact with the head. That's always been the rules. I understand where Peter V'landys is coming from. The junior participation in rugby league has dropped considerably, and he's of the view that if we make our game a little bit more safe, it could promote a little bit more activity and registrations at the junior and grassroots level. So that's always been the change. Where I think teams are now taking the mickey out of it is that the referees are missing things on the run and players are staying down. And then they're reviewing that or viewing the footage and they're getting a penalty and getting sent off as a consequence. When I coached in England, they just introduced a system that unless an incident happened and the referee or the official missed it, if it went back and it was a send-offable offence, they would keep it status quo. They wouldn't penalise. So I understand why they're doing it, and with the referees coming to training and doing more opposed, it's going to be a level of awareness and a re-education program in the training sessions for the NRL players to make them understand, if they already don't understand, that you can't hit around the head anymore.
And just on that with the that contact, and you mentioned about players staying down. I don't know if anyone here noticed it last night, but it seemed to be there were a few more players that were taking a lighter brush to the head and then staying down, looking for that penalty that was coming. I thought we actually went down this path a number of years ago when the video refs were first introduced, and they were becoming a little bit too involved in the play, and they were players were staying down if there was any sort of high shot because everything that the player stayed down for was being reviewed. And it seems we're going back over the same ground. Now, the NRL got rid of that. They said the video ref shouldn't come back in. It seems like it's being revisited all over again.
And that's what I was talking about a couple of minutes ago. When I was coaching in the Super League, the chairman got all the coaches in and said, where are we going down? Because players were staying down. It was affecting the continuity of the game. So then all the coaches agreed with the chairman that if it does go back, and unless the player would be sin-binned, they would keep the... And I think that's where we need to go. And I know Justin Holbrook had some words to say in this morning's paper about that. We were coaching over at the same time in England, and it stopped the players staying down playing for a penalty because it's not in the best interest of the game, but it's not illegal to do it. It's just frowned upon.
An observation that both 60s and myself made last year in terms of opposed sessions, and this is going outside of the current crackdown, but the NRL bubble and the limited amount of people you had inside that bubble severely restricted what could be done in opposed sessions, Joey. Sometimes there weren't enough players to fill out the entire team. You had coaches stepping in. There were almost always players playing out of position. And something that we both maintained was that the Eels are really benefiting in this year from having those fleshed out, fully opposed sessions against the quality New South Wales Cup team in the case of iron sharpening iron.
Yeah, I think that was the case with every club last year, Jono. Because of the bubble, their clubs couldn't do their opposed sessions, so their attack or their offence was a little bit more clunky than what it is this year. And perhaps that's a piece that's contributing to the magnitude of points being scored. The lack of defence practice last year and the lack of offence practice last year, not being able to do it in an opposed environment, that may have something to do with the blowout scores, but it's certainly a contributing factor and one which Brad really enjoys. The more opposed rugby league we can do with our knock-on effect cup team or our opposition team, the benefit we're going to be from a conditional perspective and a skill-based perspective.
Now we're back to the Ask Joey questions, and this one's from Greg, and he asks, in your time coaching, can you recall many players from New South Wales, apart from code switches, who advanced to NRL level playing without ever having gone through a junior rep pathway system?
Got him on the spot here.
Wow. So someone that's gone on to NRL that hasn't been involved in a junior pathway program.
Yeah.
And the junior pathway programs would be either Harold Matthews, SG Ball or Jersey Flag.
Yeah.
Well, yep, the two first... Mate, can you keep it down there, please? You just took me thunder. The two people that come up to it is Sammy Radradra and Mike Acevo. But I don't think they fit the criteria that you're talking about.
No, I'm looking for someone who has played junior footy for their local club, never got picked up as being someone of an elite talent, so was never part of a pathway system, and managed to keep playing, might have got picked up through whether it be the old Metro Cup or Sydney Shield. Oh, there we go. Lee Odenryan. We had to know that one of the oracles in this audience in Para through and through would be able to identify Lee Odenryan.
Yep.
So
he'd certainly be one. The other two that come to mind, perhaps Daniel Alvaro. I can't remember Daniel. I know he played in the Group 6 area, and then he moved to Brisbane and came back and played NRL with us.
He played a year of flag in 2013 with us.
He did play flag.
6 games before he got injured.
Well, that only leaves one more. The oldest debutant at Parramatta, Andrew Davey. I don't think he played junior reps.
That's a good shout.
And
still doesn't fit my category.
Yeah.
New South Wales.
I've got no one.
Bloody Queenslanders, eh?
Now, that might be someone for any of our listeners that they might be able to identify. So anyone listening at home or people in here, if you've got any player that you know of who didn't play junior representative football, just played local club football, somehow came up through the system that wasn't part of the pathways
Here we go.
and ended up playing first grade.
Here we go. We're getting someone coming in.
Just said it. People, it's just being announced that the Manly immortal Bob Fulton has passed away. It's with a heavy heart that we have to announce that. Manly's always been our great rival at Parramatta, coming into the competition in 1947. Bobby Fulton was a man who changed their direction as a club, brought them premiership success, both as a player and as a coach, and it's sad news indeed for the rugby league world, the rugby league community.
Yeah, like you said, 60s, very serious matter, and our condolences go out to everyone in Bob Fulton's family and the Manly community as a whole. Like I said, Bozo was part of the fabric of this game, one of the inception immortals, an absolute legend of the game, and the game is now poorer for the passing of him. Yeah. All right, we'll get back to the mailbag with Joey on that somber note. The next question this week, Joey, comes from Ralph. And this is an interesting one because you actually spoke about your coaching career very on the point here today. And he says, you've been both a head coach and an assistant coach, Joey. During matches, do head coaches like their assistants to be proactive, or do they want advice from assistants only when they seek it and turn around and ask?
Yeah, that's a really good question from Ralph. I've been assistant coach at 3 clubs, one under Ricky Stewart at Cronulla Sharks, the second time under Steve Price at the Dragons, and then obviously under Brad Arthur. All three head coaches use their assistant coaches differently, in that they all believe that if you see something, say it, and it's up to the head coach whether he runs with it or he doesn't run with it. I think the normal fabric of what the thought process is that if you see something and you don't say something and it happens and it goes against us, why didn't you say anything? So when I was at the Dragons in particular, I was the back 5 coach. So I looked after Daniel Vito, Brett Morris, Jason Nightingale, and whoever was playing in the centres. So my role was to identify defensively and offensively what they were doing and report back to Stephen Price. With Ricky Stewart, I was the offensive coordinator, so I looked after all the offensive stuff, while Shane Flanagan looked after all the defensive stuff. With Brad Arthur, we had a different area. I was there from a statistical purpose, and anything that I seen that was the change or a little bit different from what we understood in our preview, players injured, getting tired, going to the other side of the field, not being in position when they should be, we would alert Brad of this. There would be myself, Dave Kidwell, and Brad in the box, and David's responsibility was defence. So anything we saw, we would canvass to the coach, and it would be up to him. But I think every coach would be the same, that if any of the assistant coaches saw something, whether it was in their remit or not, they would be encouraged to advise and give their feedback on it. Not take over the conversation, because that's not the role of the assistant coach. The head coach runs the whole team. So we give information, we give tips, and it's up to the coach. So absolutely, there would be every coach would welcome that feedback.
And just a question that I'd like to ask as a follow-up to that. When you've got the coach who's on the sideline, how different is that role, an assistant coach on the sideline?
Apart from being a referee, that's a very close second as the hardest job in rugby league. Not only have you got your coach screaming from the box, you've got interchange cards, You've got the interchange official, you've got to watch the game, you've got to make sure that everyone's ready to go, and everything that goes wrong is my fault on the sideline, and everything that goes well is the coach's responsibility up in the box. You have to have a very, very thick skin and you have to be able to interpret things and change the actual message that the coaches sent down to deliver to the player. Because some of the messages that you receive from the coach...
Colourful?
Very colourful. is watered down by 25% and probably half that again.
There you go.
With the analogy that he's trying to get. And that's the beauty about working with the coaches. You know what their speak is, what their talk is. So when they tell you, you interpret it and deliver it to the player in a positive and reinforceable manner.
So a question that I'd like to ask again as a follow-up, are the coaches more likely to be succinct and blue in the message that they would send to you, which you are then translating and maybe even expanding upon, or is it the other way around where they're trying to convey a lot of information to you and you try to make it more succinct to deliver to the players?
It's certainly the latter. They would give me a plethora of information, and we've got the trainer to go out on the field. He's only got 7 seconds to deliver that message. So we have to decipher, interpret and transform what he said into 3 or 4 words to the player out there.
There is an art and a science to that one, mate.
There's an art and a science, and your skin needs to be that thick.
Yeah.
Okay, now, the next question's again from me, and I want to ask you about your career as a coach. What is the best win or the most satisfying win that you've ever been a part of? Now, maybe we can ask this as 3 parts.
There we go.
First of all, as a coach with the Pathways system. Secondly, as a head coach in senior football. And thirdly, as an assistant coach in senior football.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've been here 29 years, so there's a lot of games that we can decipher. I think the game that had the most effect on me, and probably had the greatest effect on me and really put me into the coaching direction, was in 2004, that Harold Matthews side when we took on Penrith. We went through undefeated. Penrith finished second. The only team that beat them were Parramatta in round 3. And equally, we were a star-studded side, but on their side they had Masada Asefa, Tim Grant, Michael Jennings. Yeah, they had 5 or 6 players, and the relief that I felt after that game, you can't explain, you can't describe, and that really defined me as a coach and made me more hungry for success to go up that ladder. So undoubtedly the 2004 grand final win against Penrith in the Harold Matthews Cup was ultimately my favourite game.
What about at the NRL level as an assistant coach? Is there a particular win that stands out for you as being really memorable?
There was. It wasn't at this club, unfortunately. It was at the St George Illawarra Dragons. It was
we'll just stop you there.
Yeah, just cut him off. 10-3.
It was the Anzac Day test. Roosters and Dragons.
That is an iconic matchup,
Yep.
isn't it?
And for some unknown reason, Stephen Price didn't want to coach from the coach's box. He wanted to coach with the general public in an open air box at the old SFS. Roosters were outstanding. They had a star-studded side, and with 9 minutes to go, we were down by 3 scores. But as JC Nightingale has done many a time, he scored this amazing try. As I said, with 9 minutes to go, we kicked the goal. Jamie Howard kicked the goal. And then the bald badger, Michael Wayman, scored with 4 minutes to go, right near the post.
Next to the post.
It was converted. And on the second last tackle of the game, our captain, Ben Cray, crashed over from dummy half to win the game. I thought Steve Price was going to jump out of the open air box onto the field. It was unbelievable. Just the atmosphere, the last post, the rivalry between that game, and the way that the Dragons came back. I got goosebumps just talking about it now.
And in spite of the fact that your journey as a coach has taken you to and from the club, it's probably an understatement to suggest that you're a Parramatta man through and through.
Yep.
You've been a fan for the vast majority of your life. To go with that, I'm losing myself. What would, as a fan as much as a coach, who would you say is your favourite player or players from the golden period in the 80s through Brian Smith's tenure in the 90s and 2000s right through to the current times, mate?
My favourite player is someone that I coached and I have a great relationship with, only because of his leadership qualities. That's Tim Manor. Tim Manor displayed what it is to be a great person off the field and showed what a great person is on the field. He led by example, and everyone that he came in contact with, he made them feel he was like the only person in the room when talking to them. And I think his level of, being club captain, and just the all-around good guy that he is, I've never heard anyone talk poorly about Tim. Having coached Tim at a young man and as a seasoned player, he never changed.
And he persevered through some serious stuff as well, obviously, with passing his brother Johnny. He never let that get him down as a player and managed to elevate that into something triumphant for the two clubs, the Cronulla Sharks and the Parramatta Eels. Yeah,
and I coached John and Tim in the same team in 2005 in our SG Ball, and I coached John Manor at Cronulla Sharks when I was assistant with Ricky Stewart. And I know that had a huge effect, not only on him, but on his mum and dad and the family. But he took it in his stride to make sure that he turned the negative into a legacy, into a positive. And irrespective of what he done on the field, he played 2 State of Origin games. He was selected for Prime Minister's 13, but it's more what he done when he wasn't wearing a footy jersey that really impressed me, and that's why he'll always be my favourite player.
What about as a young bloke, as a young Parramatta supporter, someone that you just admired for the way they played, your favourite player to watch?
He was someone that probably not many people know about. I don't think he played for Australia, and unfortunately he was a Queenslander, and that was Daniel Wagon. I really liked watching Daniel Wagon. Brian Smith had this knack of putting Wags at winger, at centre.
He was a super utility.
At lock, played him at 5/8.
Correct.
And he just done everything well. He just done his job for the team. And I think that he didn't get the kudos. He didn't get the recognition. I know he played State of Origin, but I don't think he's going to be a legend at this club. But for those years that he was here and the holes that he plugged for our club, he was a real important piece to the puzzle in that side that Brian Smith had 10, 15, 20 years ago. So, yeah, he was a good fellow, Wags, and someone that probably didn't get the recognition in that team that deserved.
When Brian Smith brought Daniel Wagon to the club from St George as a completely unheralded winger, there was no excitement amongst supporters at his signing. And even when he first was playing on the wing for Parramatta, again, not too much excitement, not too much acknowledgement from the fans. But the longer that he was at the club, the more holes that he filled in the team, the stronger his performances became. I think he earned a decent level of respect for what he was able to provide that I don't know that too many other players provided back then.
I dare say, 60s, that he would have been on the opposition tip sheets a couple of times because of the consistency of his football. He was never that person that got 3 points in the Dally M or whatever the case may be, but if there was a half point for the 4th or 5th best player, he would have got that in all of his games.
It was like the glue that sort of held
He was the glue that held everything together.
Okay, now there is a big match on today, ladies and gentlemen. So maybe I can get this with a cheer or a show of hands. Is there anything much better than beating Manly in a game of rugby league? What do you think? Is there anything better?
No way.
So, Joey, as someone who's been around the club for as long as you have, in a junior rep playing capacity, as a coach, for you, is there anything much better than beating Manly?
There's only one thing better, 60s, and that's winning a grand final. So that's how important and how much we love playing and beating Manly.
Look, a bit of respect to Manly, because I was thinking back on some of my memories as a rugby league supporter, and some of the best ones are actually playing Manly, and not all of them are wins, and not all of them were here at Parramatta Stadium or Bankwest Stadium or Cumberland Oval. Going to watch Parramatta play Manly at Brookvale when there was 23, 24, 27,000 people in Brookvale Oval. Now, today, if you've got 15,000 people in Brookvale, you've got a very crowded ground for people to be in. You can imagine what 27,000 people was like out on the hill at Brookvale Oval. Some of those days were some of the best memories. Not that I want to go and stand on a hill as I'm getting older and more used to the creature comforts of Bankwest Stadium, but they were some of the greatest memories, going over and cheering the Eels on, and having so many Eels supporters at Brookvale Oval that you'd get the Parra chant starting at Brookvale Oval and seriously outnumbering the Manly supporters there in the ground. Some of the greatest memories of my life as a football supporter. So, putting your coach's hat on and looking at today's game, how do we beat Manly? How do we shut down Tommy Turbo?
Yeah, well, you probably answer the second question first. The second question answers the first question. How do you beat Manly?
Simple advice, but effective.
That's great advice. I can't say that on the radio, though. Yeah, but it's the Parramatta Leagues Club.
Having a bit of fun with the crowd here.
Look, I think John Trbojevic is playing so well, and he's a form player of the competition. You'll go a long way of beating Manly if you can not shut him down. You won't shut him down, but to slow him down. So that's the answer to the first question, to mitigate Tom Trbojevic. Where he really comes to the fore is on the back of quick play of the balls. So I know at training this week, and I know there's been an emphasis on winning that middle third. If you stop their forward pack, you slow them down, you bend their line back, you're going to take a lot of juice or a lot of power away from Trbojevic particularly.
Because I've noticed in Turbo's form in this resurgence of Manly this year, that if something's not quite working in one part of the game, he injects himself into another part of the game.
And this is why I was saying, Sixes, you can't actually shut him down. He takes the ball at first receiver. He'll catch the ball at second receiver. He'll play off his brother out the back.
He'll be the point of play to his brother.
Yep, he'll play to his brother back on the inside. Where you will have a lot of success or more success against defending against Tom Trbojevic is not actually trying to stop him, but have an awareness of where he is. If Jake and Tom are together, that's where the ball is going to go. So that's where you need to be sharp and diligent, and you need to work from the inside when the ball goes away. That's the area where you have to be good to beat Manly today.
Now, that would also seem that we're taking care of our own business in that regard, because there's like some of the foundations, aren't they, in playing a good game of rugby league. taking care of your own middle, making sure that you win that middle third of the field, shutting down opportunities for the opposition in their attack by controlling that middle.
And I think, to be fair, that's one area where we've been really, really good at. And you can see the evidence by the season that Reid Marnie is having at the moment. He's jumping on the back of play of the balls that they're bending the line back. And our defence with Regan and Junior and Oregon and Ice coming off the bench and playing a middle role are doing a real tremendous job for us defensively. And that's going to be the focus today, to maintain and hold that middle third, to mitigate the damage that Trebojevic will do to us.
Have we signalled via this week's team selection with former Manly junior Joey Lussick on the bench that we expect Reid Marnie's going to be selected in the Queensland State of Origin team? Is that a tip to the future, do you think?
Some would suggest that.
Because I think it's to me it's great that he's being brought into the team and being able to familiarise himself on the field in first grade before we have to play any games without Reid Marnie.
And the other thing is too, you need to have a backup as well. Unfortunately, Will Smith's not around at the moment.
Broken phone.
You could have Ray Stone there as well. So I guess it's just another point of difference that Brad's trying. And when you are at the top four part of the ladder, you can take little, you can try things, and perhaps, we're reading too much into it. I would like to think that Reid Marnie is playing of the form that warrants selection in Queensland Origin, but might be a point of difference too as well, having Joey Lussick on the bench, having played with these boys last year, might be a point of difference.
Now, Manly were the winners in the last start when they met in round 10 2020. That was the game that the Eels had a swath of injuries before kickoff. Moses, Ferguson, Madison all out. Manly prevailing 22-18. But head-to-head under Brad Arthur, the Eels have won 9 of 13 clashes, very much had the ascendancy in the head-to-head contest. How do you see today playing out, mate, if you had to pick a result and a margin?
Yeah, well, Des has got his team firing. What Des does well with his team at the moment, he's got his players outside his top 5 of his playing group that are all playing well. So he's got the not so impressive type of players firing, and you can see they're starting in front of people that have played Test football. But it's going to come down to, and Brad's been talking about it the last 2 or 3 weeks, and he spoke about it again on training on yesterday, is chasing the collision with the ball and without the ball. So it's going to be a battle through the middle third, and if we win that middle third, we mitigate Tom Trebojevic.
Well, mate, we're now at that point in our podcast where we're about to take a little bit of a break. So can we get a score prediction? First of all, 40, from you, a score prediction for today?
It's going to be a tight one, you have to think. You obviously want Parramatta to prevail. I'll tip the Eels to win 28-12. Oh, sorry, 22-12, not 28-12. And I'll go with Mitchell Moses, first try scorer.
Joey?
I'll go 22-16, Parramatta, and Junior Paulo, first try scorer.
I'm thinking along your lines there, Joey, because I think it's going to be a tight match. I don't think it's going to be especially high scoring. I'm going for a 22-14 victory to the Eels, and I'm going for that great Parramatta junior Clint Gutherson to be first try scorer. Yeah, just that's a little special message for any Manly supporters that
Stoking the fires, you like to see that one?
I don't mind who wins in that. You, me or Jono, as long as one of our scores comes up, I'll be happy.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to be back on at 2:15 with Parramatta legend Steve Ella. So I know there's going to be people looking forward to hearing from Steve, meeting Steve. So stick around. 2:15, we're back on with Steve Ella. In the meantime, Paraleagues has asked if you wouldn't mind grabbing one of these, scanning the QR code, give a bit of feedback
Help shape your game day experience.
Sorry?
Help shape the game day experience for the
it's,
fans.
this is all to help shape what's offered here at the club as part of the game day experience. We want Parramatta Leagues Club to truly be the home of the Eels. That's why we're going down the path that we are with making it all about Parramatta here on match days. If that's the path that you're happy with the Leagues Club to take with our match day presentations, please grab one of these, scan it, give the feedback, much appreciated. Okay, everyone, we're taking a little bit of a break and we'll be back on at 2:15.
Thank you.
ladies and gentlemen, we're actually coming on a little bit earlier because we're blessed with not just one former Eels great, but two. We've got Steve Ella joining us now, and we've got David Lydiard, who'll also be joining us as well. So let's have a round of applause for two great Eels players. And we were just talking before because both of these players are part of a really elite group of Eels players to have won premierships. As Eels supporters, you all know that we haven't won too many premierships. So to be a player who's won a premiership with the Eels, it's a very small group. Steve, you've got a rough idea of how many that is.
Oh, I think it's around 23, 24 players in total.
So when you think about today, when you've got NRL squads of 17, 18 on match day, so you know that every year that you're going to get about 17, 18 players on grand final day that are going to get grand final rings. And Parramatta's had 4 premierships that were won during the 80s, and it's only a total of about 23, 24 players that won a premiership with the Eels. So it's certainly an elite group. So, ladies and gentlemen, he's played about 157 first grade matches with the Eels, Origin, Test matches. He's one of the most exciting players to have ever graced the rugby league, Phil. Can we have another round of applause for Steve Ella? Now, just before we get on with some of the footy questions, a number of years ago, Steve, I met you at a Ken Thornett medal. And I went up to you like, you know, I figure you should know me. I'm an Eels supporter. We know you. And I said, mate, it's Craig from the Cumberland Throw website. And your reply was, never heard of it.
I mean, I've got to qualify that. My son's here and he knows I'm not real good at social media, so podcast is something I haven't done.
That's all good.
But look, mate, we've got signs and everything. We're here. We are. So, in all seriousness, mate, when you're one of the legends from that Eels era, people do feel like they know you. Do you still get that recognition from strangers?
I think sometimes I do, but most times no. I'm I suppose just a normal bloke who does normal things like everybody else, and I don't get bothered if anybody wants to come up and talk to me. That's always nice and always fun. But no, now these days I'm just a general person in the community. So.
Zip, we're here in the wonderful Parra Leagues, and there was a bit more socialising at the League Club after training, after games back in the day. It was a bit different in regards to the whole period, wasn't it, for players and the Leagues Club?
Well, I think we on Thursday night we probably get together, have a couple of beers together, but when Jack started, he sort of tried to stop that. But yeah, it was about us as mates getting together, and that's one of the good things that we had as a team is that we're all good mates, and I was just catching up and having a good time together. Liz was probably the leader of our social activities. So.
Now, back in 80, 81, I was working here at the club. I spoke with Brett Kenny just a couple of weeks back, and he was a fellow employee at the club. But I said to him, I used to be rostered on, I'd see on the same roster Peter Sterling listed. And I think, I'm working here with Peter Sterling this week. It never happened. He was never there. Can you enlighten us about Sterlo?
Well, at that time, Sterlo was living with Lids. So Sterlo had a motto. His work was around quality, not quantity.
Of course, back then, Zip, rugby league was more semi-professional than the full-time job it is now. And you were doing an apprenticeship when you started, but you had a serious knee injury in 1979 when your career was just 4 games old. What did that mean for you and your apprenticeship away from the game?
I had an apprenticeship on the railway. I busted my knee in 79. I snapped both cruciates and my medial. I was in hospital for 8 weeks. I was in plaster for 7 months. I had 3 months off work and went back and just that admin work for a while. But it probably took me 2 years to get back on the field. So it was a pretty traumatic time, but it was just one of those things that as a league player you go through.
Given how serious that sort of injury is today, with all the advances in medical science for sporting players, your career in hindsight is that much more incredible. Like what you managed to come back and be as a player is a real credit to the work that you put in.
I think the desire to play, not only play football but play for Parramatta was one of the main reasons that you work on injuries. I think even the players today, if they've got an injury, they'll work hard. And if you don't work hard and you don't put the effort in, you're not going to get the reward. So, and that for me, it was around if I want to play again, I've got to work hard. So I just did that.
So, back on the footy field, you played every backline position in first grade. Did you actually have a favourite position?
Probably my favourite was in between 5'8" and centre, because when Brett played 5'8", I loved being in the centres. When Brett wasn't playing, I loved playing 5'8". So I still think he's the best player I've ever seen, Brett. But so having him at 5'8" and me in the centre is always a lot of fun, and probably those two positions. I suppose my first game in the Australian team was at halfback. So I played halfback a few times in Australian jumpers, so that was interesting. And the next game in Australian jumper was fullback, so it was all over.
We just spoke about the recovery from that injury you had in '79, but a number of years ago, Sixties and myself had the chance to speak to one of your old stomping ground mates from Mount Pritchard and Eric Grove, and he spoke to us about some of the changes you had to make as a result of that injury. Can you elaborate to us what you lost from that injury and then what you gained in as opposed to as you learned to compensate for that injury?
I suppose getting injured the way I got injured does affect your pace. People thought I was quick, but I was actually quicker before the injury. I reckon I lost about 4 or 5 yards off pace when I had the knee injury. So that sort of pulled me back to the pack a little bit. But I think the big thing for me was I lacked confidence there for a little while. It took me a fair while to build the confidence back up, but I think once you start to realise you can work through anything, and whatever adversaries put your way, you can work through it, and you get your confidence, and anything can happen. So I suppose it's just how we work.
So on that try scoring front, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw Josh Addo-Carr cross 6 times in a match, and it was the first time since 1950 that 6 tries had been scored in a first grade match. But on the 1982 Kangaroo Tour, you scored 7 tries in a match. Can you talk us through what happened in that match to get 7 tries in a game?
I suppose to put it in context, the game before Eric scored 5.
Right.
So Eric was bragging a little bit about how he scored 5 tries, because we always have this competition, me and Eric. So he was just bragging. So when we played against a team in the Pyrenees, it was wet, it was muddy, and the opportunities just come my way, and I ended up scoring 7 tries. I probably should have scored 9, but I gave 2 away.
9 tries would have been some sort of record.
Continuing with that theme of tries, Zip, and to pinch something that you said about Sterlo, about quality over quantity, you scored crucial tries for Parramatta in the grand final victories, including the try that wrapped up the 1981 grand final. What was that moment like to score that try, know that you secured Parramatta's first ever premiership, and lead to that iconic line that, ding dong, the witch is dead?
I suppose getting the ball off John Mulgrew, because we had a good back line, but that movement of the ball across that back line in that particular occasion was really special. And being on the end of the pass from John Mulgrew to be able to put the ball over the line wasn't only special for us, because we were only young blokes, but for Bob O'Reilly, for Mick Cronin, for Ray Price, who had been through Parramatta grand finals where they've been beat, Ronnie Hilditch, all those older fellas, we knew how much it meant to them, and we could see how putting us in a position to win the game also gave them that lift, and because they lifted, we lifted as well. So I think it was more special for those older fellas, and because they'd been through the hard times with Parramatta, where we were only just young blokes and we hadn't been through those hard times. We had a lot of success as kids growing up playing footy, so we expected success, and under Jack, he expected success. Yeah, but it's the older players like Pricey, like the Crow, like Bob O'Reilly, and Ronnie Hilditch, Steve Edge. Seeing how special it was for them, that made it for us.
How crucial, just on what you said about expecting success, how crucial is it in a successful team to expect success?
Well, the success doesn't come to you. You've got to work it. You've got to work at it, and you've got to have good game plans. You've got to have good structures. You've got to have the ability to work hard, and I suppose come up against adversity, how to react to adversity. So we had a really good coach who actually taught us how to react to adversity. And when we were in difficult situations, I had wonderful leadership, not only with the coach, but we had good leaders in our team. Steve Edge was our captain, but he was a leader. Bob O'Reilly was a leader for us. Pricey was a leader. Mick Cronin was a leader. So having those leaders actually makes it a lot easier.
Now, some people might not be aware that you were actually a goal kicker as well, and obviously during the Crows years that wasn't something that you were called on to do too often, but in your last season in 88 you were a regular goal kicker for the team. How do you rate your kicking?
I've never been asked that question before. How do I rate it? I was just an average kicker, trying to do my best. But I grew up goal kicking as a kid, and I really enjoyed it. When I come to Parramatta and the Crow was kicking, I enjoyed that even more. But when I had the responsibility of kicking, that was fine too. So I didn't mind that pressure. That was always fine. 6
field goals too over the years.
Yeah, I didn't realise I kicked that many.
Yeah. So was that something that you practiced, or was it just you were in that right position to have a shot?
I think a lot of times it was the situation of the game, and a lot of times those field goals probably were when Sterlo was off the field, or when Sterlo wasn't playing, or it was just one of those things where I just wanted to do it because I could. So just depending on where the game's at and the situation. I never ever gotten in trouble for it, so that was one good thing. So yeah, it was always good fun.
Well, see, now the thing is, after today, you'll be able to, when someone says to you, how many field goals did you kick in your career for Parramatta, now you'll have the answer.
That's true.
Half dozen.
I'm going to jam you up here, Steve. If you had to wipe your memory bank of your rugby league career and start over, but you're allowed to keep just the one moment or the one memory, what would it be?
One memory, beating Manly in 82 grand final. So, 81 was fantastic. Beating Manly, though, in 82 was special.
That's actually a question that we put to people here. How much do people enjoy getting a win over Manly? And I think it...
Anytime you beat Manly is a good day.
Okay, so now moving on to a hypothetical. You're able to wind back the clock, you're in your prime, you're playing in 2021. What would be different about Steve Ella, the footballer, if you were playing NRL right now?
Probably my size. When I played, for example, when I first started in 79, I was 72 kilo. When I finished playing in 89, I was 78 kilo. And we never done any weights. So weight training was something we didn't do. That came in back in the 90s. So I think probably size and strength would probably be a lot better.
Positionally, where do you think you'd fit in the modern game?
What? Be either centre or 5'8" still.
So, what about this year's team, Steve? How do you rate this year's Parramatta Eels team?
I got asked that question on Channel 9 today, and I suppose the easiest way to pull it is that I think we're a lot better balanced team this year than what we have in previous years. I think the coach has done a really good job in pulling a really good squad together, but having a good 7, good 6, a good 9, and a really stable, steady fullback, which everyone trusts is prime. But other than that, we've got a good go forward in our forwards, and it's really well balanced. So I think we're in for a really good show.
And just on that, because that term, the spine, is a more recent phenomenon being used in rugby league. Were those positions of the dummy half, the half 5'8" fullback, were they as critical back when you were playing, or is it something that's become more critical this day and age?
I think it's more critical now, but I think back in the old days, it was really important to have like a good front rowers, because our go forward was with our front rowers, but not only our go forward, but the scrums were different. So if we didn't get possession from scrums, we're always going to be defending. So we needed a good foundation in our scrums, and our front rowers were fundamental in that. I mean, a good example, in '86 we had Jeff Bugden and Terry Leadbeater, and we called them the bookends. But they laid the foundation for us as I suppose, with spine players or fast players to do what we needed to do. But without them laying the platform, it made it difficult for us, but they were terrific. So I think it's different these days. So because the scrums are different, the type of play is different.
And finally, mate, have you got a tip for today?
Oh, Parramatta by 50.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause, please, for Steve Ella. And David, if we can get you to join us up here.
Thanks, Steve. Much appreciated, mate. You're a legend.
Good luck.
Thanks,
Your joy is that you're an unexpected guest, so we haven't got as many questions prepared.
Should we get things started with the most serious question, 60s?
Sure.
As he came up here, Zip told us that, Dave's in terrific shape, but got to ask you about your legs, mate. What's going on? Do you skip leg days in the gym?
I've always been into my fitness, and I just turned 60 this year, so I set a goal to have a six-pack to 60. My wife was pretty selfish because I wanted to have a pool party with supermodels and wearing Speedos, but she wouldn't allow it, so, yeah, unfortunately.
No, good answer.
Mate, look, one of the things that's been obvious when we've spoken to Eels players, the great players of the past, has been the camaraderie with the team and the banter that happens between the team. How important was that, I suppose, that friendships and the camaraderie within the team to the success of the Eels back in the 80s?
I was just talking to the girls about, it was like 40 years ago, I signed with the Eels. A guy called Billy Rayner come out and watched me play park footy, and I got a call from Jack Gibson and Dennis Fitzgerald. And I'm not going to swear, but I told Jack to nick off because he goes, "Boy, Lydia, bring your boots and be at Cumberland Oval at 5 o'clock." And I went, "Nick off? Who's that?" And Dennis grabbed the phone and said, "David, it's Dennis Fitzgerald, the CEO of the Parramatta Eels." I said, "Please don't tell me that was Jack Gibson," and it was. But I walked in and signed a contract. I walked into the Cumberland. It was Cumberland Oval back then, and it was the who's who were in there, and we've been mates for 40 years. I was very fortunate to play in the '83 grand final, and I lived with Sterlo, as Zip said, for a couple of years, which was tough, and because I've never met a bloke that's more lazy and bow-legged than Peter Sterling. He keeps giving it to me about my legs, but he dare talk. But anyway,
you've been on both sides of the Parramatta-Manly rivalry. What's it like being on either side of that fence? Because it's they're paternal or fraternal twins, both incepted in 1947. What was it like in the 80s being on both sides of that?
well, look, I've had the fortune to play for the Eels in a couple of grand finals. I played for Manly for 3 years. I played for Panthers for a couple, and I played in England for 4 years. And it's amazing that, like you talked about, the camaraderie. Like the Eels have been having reunions every year, and because of COVID, it's been difficult. But we've got one coming up this year at the end of the season, and we just go up there for 4 days and talk, laugh. We raise money for charity. We'll pick a charity like kids with autism or homeless people, and we all feel like those guys. I didn't do what they did. I played a few city country games, and won a Dally M, and played in a couple of grand finals, and I thought that was pretty cool. But
it is.
Those guys did it all, and I wanted to do it all, but obviously wasn't good enough. But I Mick Cronin will kill me for this, but I've got a love affair with Mick Cronin because he's just the nicest bloke in the world,
The champion of Parramatta?
Yeah, amazing.
You mentioned before about when you were signed that you were playing a bit of park football at the time. Did you come through any sort of junior representative system?
Well, here we go. Continuation from an earlier question.
Yeah, we asked this question before with Joey Grima when he was here, because Joey's the Elite Pathways coaching director with the Eels, and we're trying to come up with players who didn't have a history of coming through the pathway systems, the elite pathway systems with the club. So did you play mats or ball or flag or anything like that?
I was never good enough. I tried out for the Panthers, like those groups all through my career. I used to win every 10k run, sprints. I was always into my fitness. I was scored a few tries, and I never got picked. They'd come up. Jamie who? I look at the bit of paper on the wall to see if you were graded, and my name was never on it. So I just go back, and I loved footy, and I went back and played for the Colleton Colts, who were out near St Mary's, and Billy Rayner happened to turn up one day, and the rest was history.
So there you go. We got Leota and then Dave Lydio.
And then the Panthers actually rang me to be on the bench of first grade the week after I signed with the Eels, which was interesting. And I went to Dennis Fitzgerald and said, "Listen, I've just been called up to sit on the bench for the Panthers." And he goes, "Well, bad luck."
But that's a remarkable journey to be deemed as, you said you were deemed as not good enough to play in the representative, to play junior representative football, yet different eyes looking at how you played deemed that you were good enough, not just for grade football, but for first grade football. Would you say that's a real reward for perseverance of you, or were you just playing with your mates? What do you put it down to?
Look, I had a go every time I went on the field, but having a coach like Jack Gibson, I can honestly say that I've had some tremendous coaches in my career, and I love all of them, but we trained like NFL players. Like, we went to Los Angeles and trained with the Los Angeles Raiders. Our warm-ups were offside touch like they did in the US, like the NFL. We watched NFL games on the bus when they burnt down Clubman Oval. But then we went out and did moves like the wall. Like we'd be looking at. I would never say anything to Jack, and I love Jack. But the wall where I scored against the Roosters at City Cricket Ground, and we're all looking at each other going, "What's this? What are we going to do here?" But it worked, and I looked over my shoulder because I thought it was too good. And then Jack called me in at half-time and said, "Don't ever look over your shoulder. You could have given away a penalty, So I still got into trouble even though I did something good. But anyway.
So was that the origin of offside touch?
Yes.
Back to the Gibson era? Because
100%.
we watch teams that play offside touch as part of their training or even part of their captain's runs these days. So that's where it's originated.
That's it. Jack was the man.
All right, let's talk about something that's near and dear to you in your post-playing career. The Parramatta Eels are having a 2-week block celebration of Indigenous Round. How important it is to have such an acknowledgement of the Indigenous community, not just for the Parramatta Eels, but for the wider NRL, because you have an Order of Australia in regards to the work you've done in a similar capacity.
Well, I retired in '94, come back from England, and I started a not-for-profit. It's an Aboriginal not-for-profit called NASCA, the National Aboriginal Sporting Chance Academy. It's been going 25 years now and been in the lives of over 80,000 Indigenous youth. So, we've got the highest suicide rates in the world. We're only 3% of the population. I'm an ambassador for Are You OK and have been for 10 years. I sat on about 7 different boards trying to get our mobs through school. I just got back from Darwin, where crime rates are off the charts in Alice Springs and in Cairns and Darwin, and I'm working with the police and setting up a task force now to tackle crime rates and try and keep our kids in school, because I feel like I wagged a lot of school. My mum's Aboriginal, my father's English Irish, and but I've always grown up recognising my Aboriginal heritage. You know, I'm a Biripi fella from Taree, and I'm passionate about youth and making sure that they have a life, a career, an education, and that's what it's all about for me.
That is incredible work, mate. So well done on that, and keep fighting a good
Thank
fight
you.
there.
And just on that, David, I'm just going to run through. Every year I like to put out my team of players of Indigenous background that took the field for the Eels. So I'm going to run through it. You can either give me the thumbs up or...
I've never been picked in one, so if I am...
Well, here we go. You're about to hear it. So I've got Bevan French at fullback, yourself and Fergie Ferg as the wingers. Obviously, the zip man, Steve Eller at centre.
Was a freak, still is.
Tamana Tahu at centre. Corey Norman at 5'8", Johnny Simon at half. Daniel Wagon at lock. Dean Witters and Mark Tukey in the second row. Nathan Peets, dummy half. Bookends, Artie Beetson and Jeff Bugden. And off the bench, we've got Jason Moody, Carl Webb, Will Smith and Josh Hoffman.
That's a pretty solid team. I'd love to have been, you know, we were picked for an Aboriginal All-Stars side, so I was very grateful, and Arthur Beetson was my coach in that team. I took the first ever Aboriginal side to England. I had a board of patrons, and Alan Jones helped me raise a lot of money, and Dean Witter was a young 16-year-old from his community up, I can't think of Tamworth, up near that way, and they wanted to sign him in England. He was that good a player, but now I think he does a lot with the NRL. But yeah, that's a pretty amazing side.
Be a bit tough getting that into the salary cap, wouldn't it? If you had to, if you were able to pick that. I mean, we're talking about Indigenous players that have just played for Parramatta. That's a pretty awesome lineup, I reckon.
I think it's pretty cool, yeah, and I'm really grateful that you got my name. I know you probably did it because I'm up here, but
no. This is a list that I put out every year, and from the time that I've started that list, you've been listed as the winger in that team.
I wish Guru was Aboriginal.
He was one of a kind as a winger, wasn't
Truly
he?
unique.
He is one of the most, and Zip will be laughing at me up there because they obviously played footy together when they were kids, and I just used to stand in awe and watch Guru just smash blokes and score tries. But he's the most humble bloke you've ever met. You know, he's done it all like these blokes. That's what I love about the Eels guys. They've played for Australia, they've played Origin, they've played every sort of game that they could be picked in at a representative level, but they're the most humble blokes that you'll ever meet, you know.
We chatted with Guru. We recorded an interview with Guru when the Cumberland throw first started. We went to his place, and that was something that stunned me, just how humble that Eric is. And I said to him when we were chatting before we recorded, and this wasn't part of the recorded interview, but I said, Eric, one of my strongest memories of you is actually in a reserve grade game when you were playing the Roosters, and I can't remember, it would have been as he was on his climb to first grade. He might have played one or two games by then, but he certainly wasn't a regular first grader. And the Roosters had some incredible players in their team playing reserve grade that day. One of them was Ronnie Coote. Wow. And Ron Coote made a break downfield, and Eric, in the way that he did, came cross-field chasing after him. He looked certain to score. Yeah. Eric hit him with one of those flying diving tackles right in the base of his spine and flattened Ronnie Coote, brought him down. I said to him, you probably don't remember that. And he actually then told me the whole story of the background to that game and about how he was out on the Terps the night before because he wasn't expected to play.
Ronnie Coote or Guru?
No, Guru. Guru. So
my best memory of Guru was we were playing the Bulldogs, and I think it was a major semi, and he got the ball and he beat like 7 players, like just going bang, 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 and I was just standing on the other wing cheering him. Like, it was phenomenal. I've never seen anything like it. So
as a supporter, I was up in the Barawongal stand that day, and it was happening.
You remember it?
Oh,
Yeah.
it was. I was just stunned watching it happen, and it was one of those ones where, when you hear Ray Warren calling it, and he's calling out the numbers of players that he's beating, and just to watch it unfold live was one of the most exciting things I'd seen on a football field.
I was standing on the ground cheering with you, watching it as well.
Dave,
Freak.
you've proven yourself to be very humble throughout our conversation, but we always like to ask our former greats how they pitch themselves in the modern game. We did it with Steve just before. Given that you were such an intense trainer and held yourself physically to such a high regard or high standard, how would you hold up in the modern game? Where would you play? How would you approach it?
I think because they're so much fitter, stronger and heavier now, like I know Zip said he played at 72 or 78 kilos. I'm 78 kilos at the moment, and I've had an ankle reconstruction, shoulder, knee. I've got to go and get another knee replacement. A couple of broken jaws, cheekbones. We were light and we got knocked around back then, but today's game is just a different kettle of fish, like the tackles. I feel a bit sorry for how these boys are going to end up at the end of their careers, because I know you mentioned a fellow from the Broncos who's not well, motor neurone disease, Carl Webb at the moment.
Carl Webb, yes.
And I'm good mates with Webby and trying to help him out as well. But yeah, it's a different game now. It's a very brutal game. I won't say brutal, but they're a lot fitter. Like Zip said, we didn't do weights. We just did long road runs and lots of push-ups and tackled tire tubes and stuff like that. That was our training basically back then. So a lot different.
I think I would have loved to have seen a match race between you and Josh Haddo-Carr. Would you feel the same way?
I had an Olympic sprint coach, a guy called Mark Garner's dad. Mark went and ran in the Olympics, and I used to do a lot of sprint training. And the only reason I did that was to get away from big blokes.
That's a very good answer.
Yes.
So, same question to you that we asked of Steve. If there was only one memory of football that you could keep of your whole career, what would that be?
So many, but obviously I think it's one memory, but winning the Dally M Rookie of the Year in 1983, my first year in first grade, winning the grand final, beating Manly 18-6. Zip says to me with about 15 minutes to go, Liz, you're going to have a big night tonight. So we did have a big night, and getting the photos taken with all the boys holding that trophy up. We didn't have rings now like they do. Ray Price is trying to fight to get us grand final rings.
But very fair fight. Very fair.
So it was I can't go past that one.
And what about today? What's your tip on today's match?
I got absolutely slammed by Eels supporters because I know and I love how passionate they are. But I played at Manly and I made some good friends. Desi Hasler's the biggest tight ass in the world. He won't pay for anything. So good luck getting anything out of Desi Hasler. But I am good mates with those guys, and it's like the Panthers are playing in Dubbo now. I'm up in Dubbo tomorrow, but I'm still good mates with all the guys like Greg Alexander and Roy Simmons. I played with those guys. To have friendships 40 years later is pretty phenomenal, really.
So have you got a score for today? Are you tipping Parramatta or Manly?
100%. Like I can't not.
Good man.
I can't not.
Good man.
I've got to do an acknowledgement of a country, and it's the Parramatta's an Aboriginal name, so it's
it is
where the Eels
club.
lie. They say that's
Yeah.
where,
It is a really cool part of our history. The fact that
100%.
it's tied to the locals.
It's the second oldest place in the country in our Aboriginal history. So yeah, it's
And
pretty significant.
representing the oldest continuing culture.
And I'd like to thank Michael Basson up there, who's does a great job with the Eels, and fantastic what he does. And he's a big supporter of our Indigenous communities, and does a lot of work with me in the space I work in as well. So he's a really good man. You should get him up and do a podcast with him one day. So
There we go.
He's a good man, Bass. I believe even in his younger days he kept Jared Hayne out of the fullback spot. So he was a fair player, I believe.
Maybe we'll go and visit Jared in prison. It's very sad that's happened, but anyway, we won't go down that road.
Lids, you're an absolute legend. Thank you so much for all the work you've done post-career.
Thanks for inviting me up here, guys. I really appreciate it. I love your work. I love the podcast.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers.
And best of luck with all the work you continue to do, mate.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
mate. Ladies and gentlemen, David Lydiard.
Let Lids get off the stage. And on that rather fantastic note, I think we're going to start wrapping things up, 60s.
Mate, I'm looking forward to a great game this afternoon. I think that we're going to be in for something special over there today. The Manly side's in great form. There's nothing better than having a match between Parramatta and Manly when both teams are offering so much out on the field. I would imagine we're going to be close to 30,000 people over there at Bankwest Stadium this afternoon. If there's anybody in here today that's never been at Bankwest Stadium for a match, you're in for something absolutely special with the atmosphere. So have a great day, everyone. Can I remind you that there is the game day survey that we'd appreciate you filling out for Parramatta Leagues Club. It's all about what the Eels, what Parramatta Leagues Club does to make the Leagues Club the home of the Eels in terms of the match day program. And don't forget, later this evening after the match, we've got Timmy Manor speaking again with Steve Ella. So thank you again, everyone, for being with us. We're the Cumberland Throw, and we hope you visit our website and have a listen to our podcast, read the articles.
Otherwise, we'll catch you guys here in a few more weeks for another live show. So thanks for putting up for us for a little bit, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.